Hello Poi people, welcome to the La Manche Strait and to this highly theoretical, conspiracy, very technical and perhaps a bit boring tutorial about pendulums. And so I want to talk more about these reverse pendulum weaves and about all those eights and basically tell you results of my recent studies, as I've come to realize some things that I don't know why I didn't realize before. And it's really amazing that after so many years you can somehow sometimes find something that's like, oh yeah, of course, this is how it works, you know? I was really trying to count like what's the actual amount of circles in all these pendulum weaves and how these are related. Like when you reverse it, it just feels so fundamentally different and it looks so different. But it's technically the same thing, right? And also I felt like I don't really get the 1.5 pendulum concept. Like people call the pendulum weave 1.5, right? I do understand that visually, and this is perhaps why it has this name. It looks like a 1.5 circle because on one side it's a circle, on the other side it's a pendulum. But it's important to realize that this reflects the visual look of the move and not the way the move actually works. Because circle-wise, you know, like when the poi swings down, that's equal to one circle, right? So when you match a pendulum and a circle, during two circles of my right hand, the poi swings twice, right? So there's always a timing between pendulum and the circle. And simply every time the poi swings down, that tells me that that's a circle, right? So I was thinking like, yeah, 1.5 is weird. Well, basically it's 3. Yeah, so like the regular pendulum weave, if you just look on one hand at a time, like how many times does it swing down? Well, once, second, third, right? So it's basically like you could match that with a 3-beat weave, right? I could do this. So you see how it's a weave, swing, swing, because each swing can be matched with a circle, right? So yeah, 1.5 is a nice name when we're talking about the look of the move. Yeah, but it doesn't mean that's a 1.5 circle. Technically, it's 3 circles. So yeah, the other thing I've discovered that was very exciting was, okay, what happens when I break this rule of, okay, there's always a pendulum on top of the circle, right? So the circle's always under the pendulum. Can I reverse it? Let's have it in backwards. Can I reverse it? After like a lot of pain and depression and pulling my hair out, I finally managed. And yeah, it's this. It's really weird because it's still both in backwards, yet you see the opposite direction there, right? And it's because if you look at one hand at a time, or let's say it can be done in 2 different ways. It can be done with the 8, which is this. It's the same like the 8 that you can do in the wall plane, which I made a tutorial about, which is great because it changes direction continuously, right? You have clockwise here, counterclockwise there. So it can be done either with that, kind of painting the shape of the 8, so emphasizing like, yeah, that shape, keeping it very circular and smooth, or it could be done kind of choppy, like this, which I like less, but it's also interesting. But in both cases, you have this like opposite direction and same, opposite and same. That's super cool. It's because like the 8 or whatever, it continuously changes direction, right? So that made me thinking more about the 8s. I'm not sure if I really realized that it's really 3 circles too, right? Like this. This is really what this tutorial is about. These are 3 circles, right? 1, 2, and 3. When it's like pulled out into the shape of the 8, it's not as obvious, but if I just like, you see there's this swing, swing, and a circle, I could just do swing, swing, and a circle, which is what all the Rastaxel pendulums are based on. All these patterns can be also turned into like, you know, the 8th version. So trying to really draw the shape of the 8 with a poi. That's 3 circles too, right? So again, that can be combined with any kind of 3-circle pattern, such as any weave or any 4-pedal anti-spin or anything that has 3 circles. So yeah, random reel with 3 circles. So if I do this, for instance, Yes, each poi swings down 3 times. It's very difficult to see, but that's what happens. So for instance, I could say, okay, I could like combine that with a weave, yeah? So like my right hand now is doing like a 3B weave thing, and the left is doing this kind of weird 8. So that's, I'm not saying you should learn that, but this is just like a kind of a proof that that works, right? You can match those 3 things together, those 3 circles and 3 circles. You feel the timing, therefore you can choose what element you're in, water, fire, earth, air, whatever. And yeah, it works. A really weird one also is this. It's basically the same, but one is in forwards and one is in backwards, which you can see by the, like, what's the direction of the circle on top. So backwards, forwards. But since it's these 8s that continuously change direction, it's very confusing because what seems to be forwards or what seems to be same direction looks more like opposite, and what is opposite seems more like same. So this is another like weird version of that. Anyway, like what that is basically is the 8, but in like a weave form. So it does a circle on the opposite side, pendulum on the native. So you saw it in my previous tutorial. This one is the backwards one, and this is the forwards. And yeah, I want to get further into different things, but just like I said in that, like I wrote in that video, a good way to learn that is starting with a regular pendulum weave 1.5, with the poi to poi alignment, then going into like hand to poi alignment, then hand to hand alignment, because that's the closest, and then just trying to split those hands apart in the opposite way, so like this, and you'll start feeling this like opposite direction, this extension you can do with the arms, and eventually, hello, yeah, eventually should be able to split it into this. But I don't want to really talk about this. The 8. There is a way how to do the 8 from like kind of extension. So like normally the 8, your goal would be to have the equal size of the bottom circle and the top circle. What's really interesting is like when you stretch out the top circle and the bottom circle gets very small. And if I like let the poi lead and then I let it swing, as my hand moves forward, like let's say, see the poi leads, and it swings down, and hand, regardless of what's happening to the poi, it just keeps going its way, and then it pulls it behind. So it's this kind of interesting thing. It's like a dip, yeah? And it's still the 8, you see? Like, you could do this. If I start extending the upper part, it will look like that. And then I just want to go down into that opposite direction, all the way down with my hand extended. So it becomes that. And of course this is equal to 3 circles as well. So that made me thinking like, yeah, cool. So what does that mean then? We can combine it with 4-pedal antispins. And I believe this is what some people already did before. Or maybe they didn't, I don't know. But like this thing, which is essentially the 8, which is essentially the same thing you're doing in the weave, which is essentially the same thing as you do in the 1.5 weave, yes, can be combined with anti-spins and in-spins. And this is when this whole thing gets very complicated and exciting, because like, you know, I always talk about combining the elements and all these in-spins and anti-spins. So I feel like now there's a new member in this club of things that can be combined. You can combine any anti-spin and any in-spin together, as long as the anti-spin or in-spin has 3 circles, right? So that means 4-pedal anti-spin or 2-pedal in-spin. So then you can have combinations such as this. So my left hand is doing 2-pedal in-spin, and the right hand is doing this pendulum. And you see that this is all within the timing, right? It could be combined. I mean, it could be also both of them. So my hands are in fire, and the poi are doing this pendulum pedals at the bottom. Interesting, right? It is similar essentially to the Rastaxel pendulum thing. So I could go into this, which could actually become that, which actually then becomes just this, right? So yeah, it's so amazing how this thing evolves into something completely different. How something like this unfolds into that, right? So now my arms are in fire. I could also have my arms in earth, right? So it could be this. Super weird move. So that's like the wheel plane forwards version. It could be combined with the anti-spin, right? So my left hand is now doing anti-spin. So the poi are essentially in opposite direction in fire. The right hand does this pendulum thing, and the left is doing the 4-pedal anti-spin. That could be like wall plane version with anti-spin. So arms in fire and poi in water would be this. So again, it's something really new for me and super exciting. One last thing I wanted to show you is how the reverse pendulum weave, like let's say the 8, that's what each hand is doing, is the 8 where circles on the non-native and pendulum on the native, can be combined with some weaves. I kind of briefly showed some variations. So there's some weird combinations like this. So my right hand is actually doing like the regular 3-beat weave motion, and the left hand is doing this weird 8. Yeah. It is really a mindfuck to do this. And I just messed up. But you know, it's so interesting how the timing works and how at some point the hands split apart and they come together. Because the 8 is a combination, you know, of 2 different elements and 2 different directions. So together, it's just trippy. Yeah, but if you have nothing to do, like for the next 2 months, you can really try to figure this one out. My left hand is doing the 8, circle on the non-native, pendulum on the native, and my right hand is doing whatever it does in the backwards 3-beat weave. I could probably turn this into a 4-pedal anti-spin and find some ways of bringing that behind the body. Yeah, damn, so this I've never done before. So yeah, there are some new things to be discovered on this field, because all weaves can be turned into kind of hybrid weaves with hybrid that, you know, one, like the whole thing about combining anti-spins and weaves, right? Like each of these 2 could be replaced with that pendulum thing. So, so there is for sure some stuff like this. Yeah, and so much more. So I'll keep researching and sharing some new ones with you. So I hope you kind of understood what I'm talking about. It is really complicated from some point of view, but all you have to remember is that there are different things that are made of 3 circles, and one of them is the whatever thing you do in pendulum weave 1.5, which in fact is 3 circles. And when you reverse that, you create the 8 in a weave, and that can be combined with a bunch of things in like a weave kind of framework. Or the wall plane 8 can be also combined with a bunch of other things in different timings, such as this also, just in wall plane, and then it can be turned into like extended version of that with this like zhong thing, and that can be combined with whatever 2-pedal in spin or 4-pedal anti-spin and all the different elements with poi and with the hands. So yeah, so many things out there we don't know yet. All right, ciao belly.